It's a pleasure to have Tom Kelly from Sports Radio WIP here on Good Morning NFC East. TK, I was on your show yesterday, now you're on my show. Welcome.
There you go, Jeff. A little home-and-home action. I like it, and excited to be on this morning. Thanks, man.
Yeah, maybe I'll get Meek Mill to prop up your appearance, since that's what Cowboys fans like to rub in the Eagles' faces these days.
Well, yeah, sounds good. Maybe we could get that
for
next.
Yeah, I want to hear your initial thoughts on this game. Just overall, what were your two main takeaways from both teams?
The two main takeaways, I mean, first off, I think the Eagles are the better team. I mean, considering no Jalen Hurts in this game, I don't think the Eagles had anything to hang their heads about. I think, honestly, it was a pretty good outcome for them. They went down, they were competitive. Probably should have won the game, made some mistakes, all very correctable. But I think if these teams meet again, especially in Philadelphia, the Eagles will be favored and should be favored to win the game. The one negative takeaway, though, is the injury issues. I mean, the Lane Johnson injury, obviously significant. Avonte Maddox as well. Being without those guys for some time is going to be something that's going to be difficult to overcome. But I'd say the Eagles are clearly the better team. And, you know, if they don't make those mistakes next time, I'd expect them to win this game relatively easily.
I really like to know what happened with Avonte Maddox's toe, whether he displaced it or, I mean, it just seems like, okay, it's a toe injury, but it has to be affecting his foot and the way he's walking at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact he's been in and out of the lineup, and hey, man, Avonte Maddox is a really critical player to this defense. I think we take him for granted sometimes, but you saw Josiah Scott had a lot of problems on Sunday or Saturday. I think he's a guy that, as teams study tape, will look to exploit, and that's something that gives you some trouble. And the Eagles are going to have some real decisions to make on whether they move C.J. Gardner-Johnson into that spot or keep him at safety, and I'm not sure what the best option is right now.
That 3rd and 30 play, I know it's been talked about, how does Darius Slay let T.Y. Hilton go, but don't you think that was kind of, I guess he was supposed to get help. I don't like how Slay kind of blamed Josiah Scott and Reed Blankenship in a sense, but in a way, though, he kind of, I'll say it, he was right.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't like what Slay did either. I mean,
yeah, I only,
you know, Josiah Scott clearly was supposed to have over-the-top help. He didn't do it. But if you're a captain, and Slay made a big deal in the preseason about how much this meant to him to be a captain, that's not a captain move. Like you don't do that and throw your teammate under the bus, especially a young player, a guy that is relatively inexperienced. I was really disappointed that Slay went that route after the game.
Yeah, I was too. This is what kind of bothers me about the whole thing. I don't think Darius Slay needs to defend himself as much as he did. Because overall, I don't think he had a bad game.
No. I mean, I think, you know, obviously in the stats, everybody's seen it at this point, the stats of zone coverage versus man coverage. Jonathan Gannon didn't have a good day. I think Gannon's had a good year overall, but he didn't have a good day. And I think Slay's got to be a little less sensitive. I mean, I know it's easy to say we're not in their position. It's got to be tough when you're getting that kind of criticism, but you just got to be better in that spot. Like, I just think about other guys on the roster, and if something happened and the Eagles let go a big run or big run play, and it appeared to be Brandon Graham's fault, but it's really somebody else's fault, do you think Brandon Graham's throwing another guy under the bus after the game? It's just not going to happen.
No, and for example, the botch snap between Minshew and Boston Scott, you didn't see any of them point fingers at each other. It was, okay, yeah, we both goofed up. Like, I think that was more of a Shane Steichen thing. Why is Boston Scott in the game there with Gardner Minshew? Like, why are you taking Miles Sanders out on that particular drive?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess they're just rotating at that point. There have been several times this year when Sanders hasn't been in the game, and you've asked why, and this has been something that's weird. It's been like this for the Eagles for a long time, because remember way back it was Deuce or Shady and Darren Sproles, and why was Darren Sproles in instead of Shady? And the Eagles, I just feel like, always rotate their backs, and I do think some of it has to do with wanting to maybe preserve Miles a little more for the postseason.
Did you see the Miles Sanders social media thing? I think a couple people said to him, like, we can't wait till you're out of Philly next year. And I know how Miles Sanders thinks. He liked the tweets. I think it's more of let's give him that false engagement more than Miles actually wants to be out of here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think players in general, they need to understand that this isn't the vast majority of the fan base, because we heard the same kind of thing from Joel Embiid a couple weeks ago about fans want him traded. Nobody really wants you traded. Like, obviously, there are always going to be a couple isolated people here and there that are going to make comments, but the vast majority don't want you traded, and I think Miles probably does understand that in the end.
Yeah, and he said on numerous occasions, like, if push came to shove, he'd rather get signed by the Eagles and go anywhere else. But we got to be honest with the running back market here. And this isn't Miles Sanders' fault, but have you seen all the free agent running backs? It's like Saquon, Josh Jacobs. I mean, there's a bunch of other ones in there too. If the Eagles feel like they're not going to pay Miles Sanders because they got to pay other people, they're going to go a different route.
Definitely. And I think in this day and age in the NFL, paying a running back significant money or using a really high pick on a running back is crazy. Like, I don't think it makes sense when you're talking in terms of roster building, especially when you're going to need to pay a quarterback. Maybe that market does play in the Eagles' favor, though, and maybe Miles, that deal that he wants isn't out there. Maybe he does return on, more reasonable deal. But no, I don't think Howie Roseman's going to pay a running back top dollar.
You got a bunch of phone calls on Monday. I listened to a little bit of your show before I came on, a little after. The Jonathan Gannon slander, man, it's real and it's spectacular sometimes. And I don't know, what do you think it is why I don't get it as much on this show? On the other JAKIB media platforms I know people talk about, but why do you think the guy gets as much vitriol as he does?
Well, I think, Jeff, we've been conditioned in this city, and this is something that's bothered me for a long time, to blitz every play, and you got to pressure the quarterback, and it's got to be, 6-7 guys coming after the quarterback every play, when in this day and age in the NFL, that doesn't really work. Because, Jim Schwartz got a lot of the same criticism. Jim Schwartz is a good defensive coordinator. I mean, the Eagles are pretty fortunate since Billy Davis, who was not a good defensive coordinator, to have – a couple guys who really know what they're doing is Schwartz and Gannon. I just think that position in this city is such a polarizing one because of the Buddy Ryan legacy and the Jim Johnson legacy that people just love to zero in on the defensive coordinator, even when it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I think Gannon's actually done a really good job this year.
Yeah, they have 61 sacks. I don't know what else we could answer. Do you remember a time when the Eagles had 60-plus sacks? I mean, I was way too young when Reggie White and them were tearing up the league.
Right. And the formula in the NFL these days is you get pressure with 4 and you play coverage. Like, that's what you need to do because the wide receivers are too good. The quarterbacks are too good. The rules make it too difficult to play man coverage on every single play. So if you're not getting pressure with 4, you're really going to struggle to get off the field. So you just can't blitz at the same rate that you used to. And I think some people just don't really understand that part of it.
Would you say Jonathan Gannon's biggest weakness during the game, though, is his lack of adjustments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Gannon defender. I can't defend 24 for 24 against zone coverage. Like, at some point, you got to switch something up. And the one thing I do look at as a positive is I do think there are a lot of things the Eagles can take from that game and apply it moving forward, where if they do see Dallas, I guarantee you we'll see more man coverage. We'll see a different style, and I think that is the one positive. There's a lot to learn from that loss.
Yeah. The one thing that bothered me about that game, too, with Jonathan Gannon, I know people wanted Darius Slay or James Bradbury to kind of follow CeeDee Lamb, but you're kind of caught in the cookie jar then, right? Because then someone's open on the outside. I think you had to keep them boundary-wise on the outside. That was why Avonte Maddox was there, but I just don't think they had the personnel to actually have an answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough sometimes when you're shorthanded in the secondary. Sometimes I think you do what you've done. You do what's been successful, and the Eagles don't typically do that. And I think they did a lot of what they've done this year, and it just didn't work Saturday. And some days that's going to happen. Like, the team's not going to be perfect. And I think, as much as we don't like to lose the Cowboys, I do think there's more – you can learn more from a loss than you can in a win. And I do think moving forward, that could be beneficial for this team.
Now, it does look like C.J. Gardner-Johnson's coming back this week. would you put him in the nickel spot and say, okay, Reed Blankenship, the safety position is yours for the time being?
It's a really tough decision. I mean, if it was me, I would probably lean with Josiah Scott for now, because I know the Eagles don't like to switch around positions and move Gardner Johnson at this point. What I would do, Jeff, and you might know the logistics of this better than I will. I would do whatever it takes to free Malcolm Jenkins of whatever, obligation he has to the Saints.
There's a lot of loopholes, a lot of gray area. Let's just put that way.
I mean, like, how amazing would it be to bring him back just for the playoffs and move Gardner Johnson to the slot? It's the perfect solution. I don't know if it can happen, but in a dream world, that's exactly what I want to do. I know it's very unlikely, but that would be the perfect solution, as I say.
Yeah. You remember when Donnie Jones came back, he was technically still under contract, and the Eagles made it easy for him because they're like, okay, well, we don't really want you on our books to begin with because we have a punter now, and so we're just going to bring it back. You can get off the reserve retirement list, and we'll cut you. I don't think the Saints are really willing to do that, knowing that the Eagles basically have a top 10 draft pick, thanks to Howie Roseman and his shrewdness.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's really the problem is how he's ripped off the Saints so much over the last couple of years of the Gardner Johnson trade, the trade around the draft, that, I don't think the Saints are going to be willing to do the Eagles any favors at this point. But, Malcolm Jenkins is a highly respected guy. If he really wanted this to happen, I mean, maybe the organization would feel they owe it to him. I don't know. In a dream scenario, that's what I'm praying will happen, because I just think that would be the perfect solution for the Eagles.
I'll get your dream going one step further. The Saints decide to do this after the Eagles play them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I highly doubt they do it now, but at this point, I mean, Malcolm, you're coming back for maybe one game, in the playoffs. I would love it. Again, I know it's extremely unlikely, but, man, that would check a lot of boxes for the Eagles right now.
I know you asked me this yesterday, and off the top of my head, and again, after I signed on WIP yesterday, I'm like, you know what? That wouldn't actually be a bad idea. And it was Jordan Mailata at right tackle, Andre Dillard at left. And I said they'd stick with Jack Driscoll, but it's not like Mailata's never done this before. He did it last year.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm fascinated by Dillard's career. Like, I want to know if this guy can play. Like, I really do.
I think he can.
If he can, then that's what they should do. Like, you've obviously probably seen him up close more than me, but, I kind of liked him coming out. Obviously didn't have a great start in his career, but if he's more talented than Driscoll and they think he's better, then I think you at least need to try it. And Nick, I guess, didn't seem to dismiss it yesterday. The press conference was kind of vague about really everything, but I think that's something they at least need to consider. Because Driscoll worries me over there at right tackle.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of Jack Driscoll, honestly. Like, my mind always comes to a blank. I like him as a player. I like him as a depth piece. But if you got to play that guy more than, 20 snaps a game, and again, Lane Johnson's only allowed 2 pressures the last 7 games. Jack Driscoll allowed 1 pressure in 11 snaps. So you know the difference there. And push comes to shove, I don't know. I just don't trust Jack Driscoll at right tackle as compared to guard.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's not easy to plug guys in at this time of the year. Like we'll look back to 2017 when the Eagles replaced Jason Peters with Big V, but that happened in the 7th game of the year. Like, there was a lot of time for the Eagles to adjust and get him ready, get him trained up for the playoffs. At this point, I mean, you have very little time to get ready for the postseason. So it is concerning at this point because they're going to need to modify the offense. It's probably going to hurt Dallas Goedert's production because he's probably going to need to stay in the block more and help on that side, or they're going to need to run more 12 personnel, and Jack Stoll might have to stay in more. So it's going to affect the whole offense, unfortunately.
I can't believe we went 15 minutes without talking about one of our favorite players, and that's Quez Watkins, because I talked about him a lot at the top of the show. It's not that I don't like Quez Watkins. I do. I love talking to him in the locker room. He's a good guy, but, man, he's got to fight for footballs better. Like, those 2 Gardner Minshew interceptions, you could honestly say they weren't his fault.
Yeah, I mean, Quez didn't have a good day on Saturday, and I do like him. I think he's a good player. I think he's a solid number 3 receiver, but he's got to get better in that aspect of his game, and I guess better to happen now. I'm sure the coaches will be coaching him up hard this week, but yeah, he's got to know in those spots, even if you can't catch the ball, you got to make sure it doesn't get intercepted. Like, that's your job on those plays. And they weren't great throws by Minshew, but yeah, Quez needs to do a better job in those situations.
Do you think Minshew's performance proved that, hey, you know what? Jalen Hurts should be the MVP of this league. Like, this team isn't 13-1 going into Saturday without Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're 13-1 without Jalen Hurts. I think there's no doubt about that. I do think Minshew played well, and I think the offense had, obviously produced a lot, scoring 34 points, really 27 when you count the defensive touchdown. But I've said it before, Jeff, and I know this isn't a very popular opinion in Philadelphia. I don't think Jalen's the MVP. Like the way I view it is who's most valuable to their team. And in my mind, I mean, Patrick Mahomes has been the most valuable player on his team since the moment he stepped on the field in 2018. So, I mean, I kind of think he should win it every year. And I kind of think Mahomes is the guy, but Jalen, Joe Burrow, I think you can make a reasonable case for all those guys.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp you are. I go on a lot of Kansas City radio stations, and they go, hey, you're from Philly. Are you in the Jalen Hurts MVP camp? And I said, well, yes, but I also watch Chiefs games every week, and I see Patrick Mahomes do stuff that, let's be honest, not too many quarterbacks could do. And would the Chiefs really be, what are the Chiefs now? They got 3 losses, so they'd be, 12-3? Yeah, would they be 12-3 without Patrick Mahomes? No. They wouldn't be 12-3 with Chad Henne there. But I will say this. Patrick Mahomes is the ultimate cheat code, Tom. And it's our boy. It's Andy Reid. Because Andy Reid, man, he can make any quarterback, it seems like, a winner at this point.
Yeah, he's incredible. I mean, the way they've continued to roll, because we had a lot of questions the offseason of losing Tyreek Hill. What would that do to that offense? And it hasn't done much. I mean, Kelsey is obviously just a monster. Like, that guy at tight end is a real difference maker. But the fact that you can lose Tyreek Hill is maybe the biggest playmaker in football, and it not really affects your offense is testament to both Reid and Mahomes, no doubt.
I actually made an argument before the season because everybody was panicking about them losing Tyreek Hill and they don't have any weapons. I'm like, okay, besides Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, name me 3 decent weapons on the Chiefs offense. And they're like, well, Mecole Hardman. I'm like, okay, no. And, now they have Mecole Hardman. They have Juju Smith-Schuster. Hardman's had a good year, by the way. Marquez Valdes-Scantling overall has probably been the worst wide receiver in football, but he still has made plays for that football team. I actually think they're deeper at wide receiver this year, even though they don't have the star power.
Yeah, that they're probably deeper. There's no doubt about that. But you lose a guy like Tyreek Hill. I mean, that affects your entire offense. And it's amazing how, and this has been a thing with Andy throughout the course of his career. He'll lose guys, whether it's free agency, trade, injury, and he finds a way to modify his offense. And it's really impressive the way he's still doing it this late into his coaching career.
Yeah, I actually still remember I was on, I think it was Sports Radio 810 in August, and I said Andy Reid has won 12-plus games with James Thrash, Todd Pinkston, and Freddie Mitchell at receiver. I think you guys will be all right. And they actually had to mute the mic because they're like, "Oh my God, what a pull!" I said, "What a pull! I'm from Philadelphia. I've seen this live. Like, he's known how to win." And by the way, the Eagles had, everybody seems to forget about this. The Eagles had like a top 5 offense with them a couple times.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and they were a passing offense too. They weren't a team that's running the ball a ton, and obviously a lot of that had to do with Brian Westbrook and how they utilized him. But yeah, Andy's incredible, and I mean, I would love to see him. Like, obviously, you want the Eagles to win a Super Bowl, but if the Eagles don't win one, I would love to see Andy just get another one at some point.
Do you think we get Eagles Chiefs, or are you leaning Eagles Bill? Like, do you think Eagles will go to the Super Bowl? I guess is the first question.
At this point, I still think the Eagles go. I've been on for a while now, Bills beating the Eagles in the Super Bowl. That's still where I'm at right now. It just kind of feels like the Bills' time to me. Like, it just feels like it's their time to get there. But I think it's critical for the Bills to get home field advantage. And this Buffalo-Cincinnati game this week is huge. I mean, that's going to be a really important game to see how the AFC shakes out, because it could very well just come down to whoever gets that bye between the Bills, Chiefs, Bengals. They're all really good. They all have great quarterback play. And whoever has that bye in home field is going to have a significant advantage. So I think that game is going to be really important. And, right now Buffalo's in the driver's seat, but they really need to win that game against Cincinnati.
You know how monstrous this game is for the AFC playoff race, like you said, about the home field advantage for Buffalo. Cincinnati's still in that race, but if Baltimore don't slip up the last 2 games and Cincinnati loses, Cincinnati's going to be the 5 seed. They won't even win their division, so they'll get to play. And look, right now, I would not want to play the Jacksonville Jaguars, just how they're playing. But even if you beat them, what a gauntlet that is. Then you got to go to Buffalo again in Buffalo. If that's the case, Cincinnati needs this game, I think, a lot more than Buffalo does.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think Cincinnati's still going to find a way to win the division. I mean, I don't know what Lamar Jackson's status in it is, if he's going to be back this week or not. It feels like he's been out for a really long time.
It's been at least 3 games.
Yeah. But, I still think Cincinnati finds a way to hang on to that division. That division is just so fascinating. I know they're only 7-8, but, man, I'm amazed every year by Mike Tomlin. Like, the fact that team, that's not a very good roster. They're still they could very well make the playoffs if they end up beating Baltimore this week. And, I mean, I just think what Tomlin does on a year-to-year basis, comparatively to the talent that he has, is really incredible.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Because I don't think Kenny Pickett's been great by any standard this year, but haven't you he seems to have the it factor for a quarterback.
He's impressive, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird for him. Like, when you judge Kenny Pickett, you're like, okay, the box score don't look good. But then when you're watching his games, you're like, wow, how did he make that throw? Or, wow, how did he do this? And you see the potential in him. It's honestly what bugs me about the Steelers is George Pickens is such a you-know-what. And he's not like this great receiver yet. I think he's going to be, but he's acting like Antonio Brown, and he's not even close to that level yet.
Yeah, and, they have a long way to go offensively. But, again, I saw the same thing that you did with Pickett and the Steelers at the end of that game, like finding a way to get down the field and winning that game against the Raiders. And the Raiders do seem to find ways to lose games pretty often. But that was an incredible win. And that's another team that could end up getting, 3 teams from the division in the playoffs.
With Nathaniel Hackett now out at Denver, who do you think is the next coach to go?
Next coach to go? That's a good question. Well, I think McDaniels probably stays. I don't think the Raiders are ready to give up on him yet. I don't think it would necessarily be right. But I don't know if the Texans are dead set on Lovie Smith moving forward. Just thinking about it, man, that's a really tough question. I'm not really sure about that one and who would be the next coach to go. I don't know about Steve Wilkes in Carolina, if he's going to get the full-time job.
He probably should at this point, the way he's going.
Yeah, I think he probably should as well. I think probably looking at one of those interim guys. But as far as like established coaches, I'm not really sure. Like, I don't think Jeff Saturday's obviously going to stay in Indianapolis. But yeah, I'm not sure about the coaches who are under full-time status. I'm not really sure who's going to go with that.
There's one name, and again, this is Good Morning NFC East. I keep going back to Ron Rivera, because if they collapse and don't make the playoffs here, and again, it's very possible now because they lost 2 in a row. I still don't think they should have lost to the Giants, but this guy still don't know who his quarterback is. I mean, they go back to Carson Wentz. It looks like they're in a free fall. I'm trying to remember who Washington plays this week. I know they end with Dallas. I'm trying to remember who they play now. It's funny how you know who the Giants play and you know who Dallas plays, but you forget. But anyway, like, Green Bay still has a shot at that playoff spot. And Detroit still, in a way, they control their own destiny, even with their bad loss. And Seattle, but again, if Washington, it felt like they were in the driver's seat 2 weeks ago. Now it looks like if they slip up one more time, they don't get in. Wouldn't you think that's grounds for removal for Ron Rivera?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I know they like him down there. I think the players like him, but the handling of the quarterback situation has been weird. I don't know if that's all his decision, but the constant. I just think when you're constantly switching back, and I know Wentz was out for a little bit, but Wentz, it's like you just got to decide on a guy and go with him. And I think like the Dolphins, what they did the past couple of years with Tua and Ryan Fitzpatrick and pulling them in and out of games was stupid. So I think, if there's really a criticism, it would be that is just not picking a quarterback to really get behind.
How did the Dolphins bunch this Tua? I mean, they botched it. They botched this Tua situation again. How do you not know your quarterback has a head injury or your quarterback just doesn't tell?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to shut him down for the year. And it's unfortunate because, like, we saw that injury earlier this year and it looked really bad. And then you thought, okay, maybe it just looked worse than it actually was. But it appears to have been that bad. And who knows? I mean, you don't want to speculate or anything, but you worry about his long-term career trajectory at this point, considering, how much punishment he's taken this early on in his career.
Yeah, I mean, Luke Kuechly retired because he said, I'm sick of head injuries. And
yeah,
I hate to fear the worst for Tua, but I mean, if he doesn't get this thing corrected now, what's this, his third concussion this year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't take, and you can't mess around with that stuff. You just got to be more careful with the concussions. And, I think they need to do a better job as an organization of watching and protecting him and get it through to Tua that, hey, if you're feeling something off, you got to tell us because, this is your life at stake.
Final question for you, TK. Do you think people are panicking over a 13-2 football team?
A little bit. And I think most of it's overblown. But the one thing where I think the panic is valid is the injuries. I mean, and again, like less to Jalen than to Lane Johnson and Avonte Maddox. Like, look, Jalen, I think, will be back for the playoffs, so I'm not all that worried. Minshew's got to play this week. They'll beat the Saints. Saints stink. But the Lane Johnson thing specifically is really concerning, Jeff. And, I think in that respect, people are kind of valid to be freaking out a little bit.
Yeah. Do you think he comes back, though? It seems like, based on everything you gather, and then when you talk to some people, it does seem like Lane will come back for that first playoff game.
I hope so. And if he's back, they should be fine. As I said, if I had to pick a team to go to the Super Bowl right now, I'd still pick the Eagles. But, Lane Johnson, we went through the numbers. He's really important to this football team, and they need him back really badly.
TK, I appreciate you coming on, my friend. When's the next time you're on WIP?
I'm on today, 2 to 6. I'm filling in for Marks and Reese today, tomorrow, and Friday. And Thursday night, I'll be on from 6 to 7:30 with Howard Eskin. So I'm on a lot.
So, man, you get an hour and a half with the King.
It's great.
Doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
All right, TK, once again, I appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, sounds great. That's Tom Kelly from Sports Radio WIP, everybody. And we'll take a quick commercial break here. And